All right, just like to welcome everybody to this our webinar on the Aboriginal Languages Initiatives cash flow template documents. I'm working here with Gary Anaquad, who's off screen, but will be leading this presentation from the Saskatchewan Indigenous Culture Center in Saskatoon. I'm working here at Treaty 4 territory. Yeah, hello, Gary. I'm working at a Treaty 4 territory here in Regina at Sask Culture. I'm just going to introduce Gary. Gary Anaquad is a special projects coordinator for the Saskatchewan Indigenous Culture Center, where he's worked for since 2007.
Okay, thanks, Damon. So this is Gary Anaquad. I'm speaking from the Saskatchewan Indigenous Culture Center office in Saskatoon here on English River First Nation reserve land, sunny Saskatoon, Treaty 6. So we won't have a particularly long seminar today, session today. We're going to talk through a little bit of background about the Aboriginal Language Initiative, but we mainly want to talk about giving people some introduction to working with a cash flow spreadsheet, the cash flow template that we use with the Aboriginal Language Initiative. So this webinar is really designed for people who have been approved for funding for the Aboriginal Language Initiative. During that process, you would have filled in a budget that showed your different costs, whether it be for renting facilities, whether it be for hiring support personnel or educators or translators. And so what we need for this next step for the approved applicants is to fill out the cash flow. So this is really important, necessary paperwork. And we'll work through three different examples of typical sorts of projects. So let me call up the Excel spreadsheet that we sent out to folks here, and so you should see that on your screen, I believe. And so it's a spreadsheet that has formulas loaded into it, and so there's two main sections: a revenue section, and really the main entry would be the amount that's been approved from Heritage Canada, from ALI. You may have some other funding. You may have some in-kind kind of funding. That gets a little bit more complicated, and we won't deal with those particular issues today, but we're more than happy to work with folks who have issues with third-party funding and in-kind funding as well. So normally then you would detail your expenses there on the left side in column A, and then the amount that's been budgeted for those. Now you see a number of shaded areas there. The funding is broken up by quarter: April to June, July to September, October to December, and January to March. And so it's broken up quarterly, and you see these shaded areas have formulas in them already that basically help us do our calculations. And so we're going to ask folks to be very careful not to change any of the formulas in the shaded areas. So you should only really be adding information in the clear areas, detailing the amount of expenditures that you would have month by month. That would be a breakdown of your total allocated expenses for the year. And so you have to do little things like make sure you add the particular project name. So this is all going to be automated, administered, and so we need to make sure we have the right project name. The funding program is, of course, the Aboriginal Language Initiative, and the fiscal year in this case would be 2018-19. So you may need to change that. I'm not sure if we haven't updated that or not. So that should be 2018-19. And the start date would be whatever. And so we might, for example, start a project this September, so the 9th month there. And it's going to end March 31st, 2019. Okay. And we actually use this spreadsheet to help us keep track of and administer the programs as the projects as we monitor them throughout the rest of the fiscal year. So there's little check boxes there at the top. Don't be too concerned about those. So you just would click, and in your case, in this particular instance, it would be your forecast amounts. So what I'm going to do is talk about a particular sample project. It's kind of a made-up one, but it's an example of a project that is purely participatory. And so let me zoom that up a bit here. Okay. So this is the Skunk Hollow Community Language Classes project. So I'm not sure if you know, but Skunk Hollow is kind of the nickname for Muscogee Sono Nation, which is of course my community, and it's kind of a bit of a work plan, a sketch of what the project is. So this is a community language class that's going to be offered from September to March of this coming year, and for this, again, it's just an example, but we assume they've been approved for the upcoming fiscal year. And so this class, this project offers 3 classes per week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it's in the evenings in the evenings, and so we offered for 3 hours per evening during those 3 weekdays. So you could do a bit of planning, I'm sure. And so if you count through and look at September, for example, for this year, you'll see that there would be 12 Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays during that time, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 25th, and 27th. So there are 12 sessions that we would offer, 12 classes. And we're going to pay our instructor $60 per hour, and we cost things out. So 3 hours for $60 times E8, which of course is the number of classes that we're offering in September. So in September, we're going to pay the instructor $2,160 for those 12 3-hour classes that we're going to offer Tuesday to Thursday each weekday in September. And if we go through and look at the calendar, we have 14 days like that in October, 13 days like that in November. In December, we're going to take a Christmas break, and we're going to miss the last week of the December and the first week of first little bit of January. So we're only going to offer the class 9 times in December, and then back in January again, we're going to offer the class 12 times. Tuesdays to Thursdays, so once again, February 12 times and March 12 times. So there's our budget. So in September, we're going to pay the instructor $2,160, $2,520 in October, $2,240 in November, and so forth. And so we could charge rent at the gym there in Muscogee. So we very kindly offered a very low rate of $50 for use of that facility. So for the 12 classes that we have in September, our rent is 12 times 50 is $600. And with 14 days in October, our rent in October is $700 and $650 in November and $450 in December, and so forth. So our total rent for the project is $4,200. And just backing up a bit, our total salary for our instructor is $50,120 for those for teaching those classes at that rate. We're going to provide some classroom materials. I'm not going to really break this down, but this might be handouts for the students. I do know from working with language teachers, they can get really inventive of the sort of materials they might use when teaching a language class. So we're going to allot some sort of budget. We probably would want to see a bit more detailed estimate of the amount of paper that you might have. You might distribute. We're going to estimate we're going to attract on average 50 participants per class per week. That's a bit high, based on my knowledge of Muscogee, but that's what we're going to estimate. So we're going to spend about $100 per month on paper and those sorts of things, handouts, that sort of thing for the class each month, each of the 7 months that we're going to offer the class. Now, to assist us in instructing the class, and it's really important when you're doing something like a community language class, for example, to have materials to use. There's a wide range of things. You might have flashcards of different sorts. Just a bit of a commercial on the side, the SICC provides a number of language kits that you can use. And so we're going to provide a kit of material for each of the 50 or so participants who might attend one of these sessions to be held at the Skunk Hollow Community Language class. And we're going to estimate that our curriculum kits, our education resource materials, we're going to buy 50 of those kits, and they cost $60 each. So our total cost for our educational resources is going to be $3,000. Now, as you know, administration is part of any sort of project. So we're going to just ballpark that we're going to need something like $300 a month for administration and that sort of stuff. Someone to do our bookkeeping, that sort of stuff. And our administration costs are going to be $300 per month for each of the first 6 months of the project. Then during the 7th month in March, we're going to double that because, of course, that's when the project's going to end. We're going to need to wind things up and do final reporting. And so there's our total budget then, just over $50,000 for the instructor, for just $4,200 for rent, $700 for classroom educational resource material, $3,000 for the curriculum kits that we're going to buy. We're going to keep them at the school. We're not going to hand them out to the participants, but they'll be there at every session for the participants to utilize. And then we have our administration costs based on what we talked about, $300 a month, and then $600 for the last month of the year comes up to $2,400. So our total cost of the project is $25,420. So that's not a bad overall cost. So that's our budget. So that's what we submitted. We probably really would have broken down our costs when we did our funding proposal. Probably, though, we'd only have presented this line of information here. But as we costed these things out, these things just occurred naturally that we would discover that we'd need $2,160 to pay the instructor during the first month. Okay, so there's our business model. There's our plan to offer our class at Skunk Hollow. And so what I'll do then is I'll go to, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So here's our cash flow. So it's the cash flow that we would have emailed out, and I've filled out some of the information already. So the name of the organization in this case is the Soto Language Keepers. Okay, so that's the organization. There's the project name, Skunk Hollow Community Language Classes, Aboriginal Funding, Aboriginal Language Initiative, the fiscal year. It's running from September 1st, 2018 to March 31st, 2019. And there's what we've been approved for. So Heritage Canada, through the administration of SICC, so we're going to provide $25,420 for that. We put that in there coming from Heritage Canada. In this case, we don't have any third-party other funding. We don't have any in-kind. So our total revenue for the project is $25,420. And we then break it down. So here's our total for our instructors for the whole year, $15,120. So we're going to start with that information. And then we're going to fill in the information that we need. I've also broken out the allocation. I'm not going to do anything particular fancy. We're just going to say the project gets 90% of its funding at the start there in September, and the other 10%. We're going to do something a little bit more complicated in the case of most of the recipients for this year, but this will do for our example sorts of purposes. So what we want to do is take then our work plan there for Skunk Hollow and translate that into our spreadsheet. Okay, and so here we have September. And this is the line for the instructor salary. So how much of that are we going to allocate? So as you know, with the spreadsheet, we can do a formula if we want. So this is going to be the $60 that we're paying the instructor times 3 hours times the 12 sessions. And so there's our amount there. So the $2,160 for September that we allocated for the salary for the instructor. I won't bother doing the other formulas, but so we're going to pay $25.20 for the instructor for October, 2340 for November, 1620 for December. And you notice that the formulas in the shaded areas are kicking in to do our sum total by the quarter. And so then we'll do the last quarter, so 2160 for each of January, February, and March. So there's our total then. And so as we go along, we want to make sure our numbers add up here. So when we did our work plan, we estimated that we'd be spending the $15,120 for the instructor's salary. And then we're going to pay our rent. So again, we could use a formula. So we're going to have 12 sessions during September. And we're going to charge we're going to get charged $50 an evening per rent for that. So the $600. And then the succeeding months, I'll just type in the numbers. So $700 for rent during October, $650 for November, $450 for December. In January, we're going to pay $600. February as well. And March gets paid $600 as well. So for our classroom materials, paper, handouts, those sorts of things, we're going to pay the $100 a month, and so we'll show that for each month. And so if you're a bit more proficient, you can sort of copy and paste over as you need. But I'm just going to type in the specific numbers as we need them. And so $100 in the last. And there's, again, as you go along, you probably want to double check that the 700 is what you estimated, and that's what it shows up on the formula on the spreadsheet as well. So the kits. So remember, we're going to get 50 of the curriculum kits, because we estimate there might be a maximum of 50 people attending one of our classes, and we're going to keep those and bring them back to every class. And so for the 50 kits at $60 each, we will be paying $3,000, and so we'll show that in our spreadsheet. So that's the one-time cost in September to get the curriculum, the education resource material that we'll be using week after week. And then for administration, as we talked about, we're going to pay $300 to do our bookkeeping and that sort of thing each month. I imagine the instructor would have to fill in some sort of time card to get paid. And so for each month, we're going to pay $300 to a bookkeeper. Perhaps we might have other administration costs. There might be a program administrator, program director who's working with the instructor. So we're going to have administration costs of $300 each month, except for last month when it'll be $600, because we're going to pay a little bit more to get our year-end program. Okay, so that's it. That's pretty much as basic as we need. In-kind expenses get a little more complicated. If you have in-kind expenses, do talk to us about those. That's basically as complicated as should get. Now, things should balance out. Okay, everything should in the final event balance out. The one difference, and it's really more for us, is that we do have this variance because we're doing the holdback, because we want people to finish their year-end reporting, then they get the balance of the funding, and this is going to be vary by recipient. So basically, everything should zero out, and if it's not, well, you've got a problem. And so, and again, the last little tip I may mention is that we're going to, for our purposes, we're going to click on that these are forecasts, and as the SIC and the recipient potentially as well, we might switch these from a forecast to the actual expenditures. And do contact us if, for example, you do see that there might be some variance in what you forecast for your expenditures, because someone might not be available during a particular month for whatever reason, and so you may not be expending as much for a salary because the person just wasn't available at a particular time period. So we do allow for variances, and it would allow people to make changes as they need. Okay, so this is your basic participatory sort of project. There might be some variation you might have something more complicated. You might have more breakdown of your expenses, for example. So that's one of the major type of project that we might see. And so so there's that type of project. Now I also want to
Gary, before we move on, can we just talk about that PCH approved column beside your total budget amounts there? So when folks have their total budget amounts in that column there, like there are caps and limits on what can be spent on things like administration, travel, food, and equipment rental, and things like that. And so we calculate if you're within those parameters, you know, and so combined, you know, there's a 20% limit on those combined expenses for food, administration, and equipment rental and purchase and travel. And so that PCH approved is what we enter in, you know, to say if you're 15,120 for language instruction, it would equal that we would show what areas you're covered in, and typically we'd want them all to be within those acceptable percentages. And so we'd calculate that, and we just tell you if there's something that's over.
Okay, so I just we'll continue on. So I do want to show another type of cash flow here. It's a bit different. So this is for, again, it's sort of a made-up one, but this actually is a project that develops curriculum and offers a participatory aspect to it as well. So, and actually, this is based on a project that did occur. That did happen and has been approved and reviewed by Heritage Canada, and just to show that, you know, you can get these combinations. We do have someone having workshop kits, for example, or some translation because there was some curriculum development. There's some elders involved. Now you'll notice that we actually have a fair number of expenses in this particular case. And the initial sort of spreadsheet, I'm not sure this will apply to everyone, but you'll see in the spreadsheet that we would have emailed out, you have expenses here from 23 to 31, rows 23 to 31, but you can actually add more expenses in as you need to. Now, what you want to do is just go in and do something like insert a row. Now, what you got to be careful about, though, is normally things adjust, but notice that on some of these fields here, they didn't copy over the formula. If you're a bit more of a spreadsheet guru, you might go and copy and then paste the row that you copied. But if you do this step of just inserting, and that's certainly a good way to do it, you've got to make sure that you copy the formula from above to this blank line that you've inserted here. So you know, so we'll watch for that. And yes, in principle, you can have much more expenses, quite a long list of expenses by inserting rows, or better still, copying one of these lines from 23 to 31, then pasting it back in so it gets the formulas back in there. So you can add those. We do want to, again, just emphasize the importance of when you're adding data, just add it to the blank areas. These other shaded areas are for administration office use. And as I say, do be careful that if you just insert a row, you may have to copy in a formula to the blank areas. Otherwise, your results will start screwing up. You won't be getting your grand totals added up properly. So I did want to point that little trick out. And let me switch back then to participatory and resource development type of program. So again, I just want to show this as an example of a particular project. And again, this is how we did the spreadsheet for it, and it was all approved and fine and dandy based on this. And then and we'll have these available if people want to look at it as a sample. Then, but again, I do want to emphasize we are available for let's see. Yeah, so we are available for consultation. And this is a purely resource development one. Again, this was an approved project This was basically the budget. I changed the title and little things like that. But this was a successful cash flow that was submitted for a project that was funded by Ali. Just changed some of the numbers, some of the titles, some of the information. And so again, we'll have this available for people to look at it as a possible model.